Good afternoon, Muskegon, and you know what time it is. It's time for Turn Into your source for news, information, and more for this January 21st, 2022. It is 21 degrees outside. Stay warmed up. Hey, it is Muskegon. A couple things before I start the show. I want to welcome you, the people that are listening. But if you want to get involved, we have a special guest today. You can catch us on our streams or M106 or 103.7 WVS, our Facebook sites, Instagram. It's all there. I don't have too many times to do this, but I want to thank my wife who has to watch me rant and deal with all this news as I'm covering these news stories. And I want to thank producer Lady J and PA and Big Rob and Q89 for what they do. Stay tuned after I get done with our guest. I have to talk to you about what's happening in Washington because it's a hot mess. How can you not get a voting act done? And I know a lot of the other shows have been covering that, but I have a chance to introduce this guy. The last time he was on this show, he was running for mayor, but it was a close race, but he came out successful. As we say, put your hands together for the guest, the new mayor of Muskegon, Mayor Ken Johnson. How you doing, sir?
Good afternoon. Good to be here, G-Man. I'm doing pretty well. But yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the invitation. You said you would be here for us. We got a lot to talk about. Got a lot to talk about. We were talking about what's happening on a national level, but you're saying what's happening on a national level, why it's important to get busy involved on the local level.
So, I mean, all politics are local, but given how polarized our society is, unfortunately, and it's been polarized and fraying for a number of years, and the pandemic has kind of exacerbated that, as well as certain people at the national level, loud voices and animated people. But it's really important that we as a community, are rallying together and caring for one another and committed to one another. That is what hits home the most is us just reaching out to our turn neighbors and taking care of one another. And at City Hall, one of the things that I want to do as mayor and endeavor to do during my tenure as a city commissioner was make City Hall to be as receptive and responsive and respectful to our residents as possible, to invite our residents into the process, not only so that they're aware of what's happening at City Hall, but they have opportunities to give input and influence outcomes, so they feel like a valued partner in the going-ons and the happenings in their own community, so that things aren't happening to them or around them, but with them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Excuse me as we went right into that, but let's back up. Mayor, you were sworn in January the 4th, I believe.
Just over 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, so we can take that commissioner away as you served, I believe, was it 8 years?
Yep, 2 terms, 8 years.
And you served 8 years, and now you are mayor. The council has changed a little bit. You have a new vice mayor.
Yep, we got a new vice mayor that is now Willie German, and Commissioner Hood, former vice mayor, he's remaining on our planning commission. So I'm happy to retain him on that and continuing, him sharing his expertise and knowledge base and perspective, unique perspective on that planning commission, which is an important board as well. And then we also have Rebecca St. Clair and Rachel Gorman joining our commission as the 2 new at-large commissioners. Right. And we have 3 women on the commission for the first time this century. And we have the most diverse commission in Muskegon's history.
Right. Nice.
Which is exciting.
Nice. Now, that in itself is good news, but let's talk about some of the things that you talked about. Now the buck stops with you, kind of. You're the mayor. tell us some of the things that have been going on so far. The thing that you did for Mr. Ray was excellent. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But what has been going on with the city of Muskegon so far?
Yeah, I mean, speaking about Mr. Ray, that was just a nice way to kick off the year in recognition of his decades of commitment to our city and his stewardship of Smith Ryerson Park and the community center. So it was a really nice touch to be able to acknowledge and recognize his contributions and going forward renaming this Smith Ryerson Community Center after Mr. Ray. But yeah, some of the things going on. We had our organizational meeting the night we were sworn in, and that's when we also selected our vice mayor, Willie German, and then established our meeting schedule and so on and so forth. But one of the things that has changed from last year is I've asked that our meetings be live streamed on Facebook again.
Thank you.
They were removed from Facebook in May of last year, but I asked for them to be brought back, and people can watch and comment on the Facebook live streams.
We should be taking advantage of technology. Lorraine, I told you to send us a message to let us know if we're pronouncing your name right. She said, good, because Eric Hood has known the city from all sides, a citizen, a police officer, etc., and has seen all aspects of cityhood. I think she means city good and bad. I think that's what she wanted to say.
He's been around for quite some time and has served in a lot of different capacities. And so he certainly has a broad spectrum of experiences and knowledge bases that are important on the city commission, but as well as our planning commission.
I would say,
go ahead.
I would say also with Willie German, you have a great man there. He got his politics start running my campaign a long time ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you got a good man, a great man there. So
yeah. So the decision to switch from Commissioner Hood, former Vice Mayor Hood, to Commissioner German to be our new vice mayor wasn't, in my perspective, wasn't an indictment or punitive at all with regard to Commissioner Hood. He served admirably, as I said at the meeting, in that role. But Commissioner German has served the same number of years as Hood, and it was nice to acknowledge his commitment to our city and give him the opportunity to expand his experiences as well. And he has been an advocate for the community and shows up and speaks up. And so it was just an acknowledgement by our fellow commissioners to have him serve in that capacity as vice mayor for the next 2 years. So we appoint a vice mayor every 2 years.
Let's see. Yes, Willie is also a great choice, as he has been around for a while and seen what needs improvement and what has or hasn't worked for all citizens of our city. Thank you for that comment. So, what is, talk to me, what it has now. I was stopped in Myers today shopping, and somebody talked about a parking lot, expanding the parking lot at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, well, if that's the biggest thing that we got to worry about, I think we're doing okay. But tell us some of the things that are happening.
Yeah, so that was on our agenda last week at our work session. We discussed and deliberated and voted on Tuesday. It was going to be on our agenda last December. So let me back up a little bit. Let me give you some further context or background on that.
Please.
So in November of 2020, staff came to the commission and said, hey, we'd like to look at expanding parking and adding a new pathway at the beach. Here's what we're considering. Are you receptive to this? Do you want us to move forward? And the commissioner was like, yes, we are. We'd like you to save the trees, though, along that stretch between the kiteboarding place and the bathhouse where you want to put the new pathway in. So staff came back in December of 2020 and said, okay, we want you to approve the engineering for this now. It looks like we can save the trees. And so we're like, okay, we funded the engineering, move forward. And then March of 2021, it came to us for approval of the actual project. And at that time, it looked like the trees were not going to be saved. And it was going to be 3 rows of parking. And there was going to be some encroachment onto the beach, up to 40 feet onto the beach, as well as removal of trees. And I wasn't keen on that. And personally, and I had invited DPW Director Leo Evans out to the beach to meet with folks. This was in March of, so it's still in the winter time, March of last year, and we had about 30 to 40 people from across our city coming out to engage him and ask questions and give their input on it. And so one of the things that came out of that was an alternative plan to what the staff had recommended. And that alternative plan was to remove the third row of parking, change the pathway from concrete or from asphalt to concrete, save the trees, and narrow the pathway. And so that's what I'd advocated for last year. It didn't succeed last year. The original proposal got approved 5-2, and the city was going to piggyback off the county project and use their contractor. That didn't end up happening. The county said you need to get state permitting because the state was telling us we need to get permit on it, and we weren't. The city didn't necessarily feel that was appropriate at that time or necessary. So the project didn't happen for that reason. We redirected the resources to other parks in the city. However, fast forward to December, the project was going to come back to us, and I asked management, can we delay this to January, because I didn't want the old commission deciding that it should be left to the new commission, particularly on the heels of an election. And I didn't want folks in our community to feel like this matter was being pushed through or forced through. And I didn't want it being decided by the old commission and people thinking that was, and potentially undermining trust in government. That's important to me, is that public trust in our government. And so staff was like, sure, we can move this to January. And so it was brought to us at our work session last week. And the commission deliberated the staff recommendation, which was essentially the same as last year, with some additional parking inside the ovals and a new pathway coming from the bathhouse to the water's edge. But it was resembled closely to what was recommended last year and approved last year. What the commission adopted was closer to that alternative plan. So the feedback we had heard last year, including a woman that had written a letter and was passing out the letter at the beach and asking people to send it in. You might have even seen the letter, and you might have sent it in yourself, Greg. But that letter basically was saying, get rid of that third row of parking on Beach Street, because they didn't feel it was safe and it was going to create excessive congestion there. And it was switch the pathway to concrete from asphalt, narrow it, and save the trees. And so that's what the commission did last week. We were receptive to that feedback and responsive to it and delivered on what we were hearing in that regard. Now, the pathway didn't get narrowed as much as some folks wanted. Some people wanted it to be only 10 feet or 12 feet. Some people at 8 feet. Staff recommendation was for 20 feet. The commission decided on 16 feet. And the thinking there was that there'd be 10 feet, and it's going to be continuous, but it's 10 feet marked for bikes, two-way traffic of bikes, and then 6 feet for pedestrians and wheelchairs and strollers. Now, if it gets too congested in one particular area, because it is continuous pathway, if you don't have oncoming bike traffic to get around a point of congestion, you can just walk around there. So people are concerned about that still being too wide and it being on the beach side, but that was what staff and commissioners were comfortable with, and there was a reasoning and thought that went into why we arrived at 16 feet. And some folks I'm hearing from still want to be 20 feet. Other people want to have 10. So you can't please everyone in that regard. I recognize that.
No, just a question: is there going to be more accessibility points for the disabled or wheelchair bound? Thank you for that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So that was part of the thinking going into the new pathway, which resulted from our public input gathering and forum process that we did for our Imagine Muskegon Lake plan a few years ago. And what we heard from that is need to improve mobility and accessibility at the beach. And so this new pathway is designed to better accommodate folks in wheelchairs and parents with strollers. And then there's going to be a new permanent pathway. So you may be familiar with the temporary, or the one that we put out and take out each year, going from the bathhouse to the water's edge. Well, we're going to be putting in a permanent concrete pathway from the bathhouse to the water's edge, and there's going to be a little landing as you get to the water's edge. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at doing in terms of improved accessibility. But then from the parking lot, because what's going to happen is there will be 2 rows of parking from along that stretch of Beach Street. And then there'll be the tree line. So it'll be a natural buffer, sand buffer with tree line, and then the new pathway on the other side. But there'll be connectors periodically so that people can walk or get from the parking lot to the new pathway. So we are being mindful of that accessibility. And I've talked to staff also about potentially buying these Moby mats and putting those out additionally. So we have the one permanent concrete pathway, but then also putting out these Mobi-Bats that can accommodate accessibility down to the water's edge, and those can be moved, fairly easily. They're movable temporary access points.
Okay, I want to move on. Thank you for all the questions, Mariah.
Just one other thing on that, real quick. So with regard to the parking configuration and in the current parking lot at the Ovals, we are reconfiguring that to squeeze out more parking. That parking is not encroaching onto the dunes. It's not encroaching onto the beach. So I've heard some folks saying that we're expanding parking onto the beach or cutting into dunes. That's not the case with this project whatsoever. We're squeezing out additional parking by reconfiguring the existing parking lot. And it looks like we're going to be even adding a row to accommodate on the north side of Indiana Avenue to accommodate food trucks and retail chalets, which had also been envisioned in our Imagine Muskegon Lake plan. So getting a little bit, creating more entrepreneurial opportunities for folks in our community while also enhancing that beach-going experience. So having some options to cater to beachgoers.
I want to pick your brain on this thought. If you look at Laketon and where we're at, the radio station is, we are the marijuana capital where we're at. Approximately 13 shops, roughly. I know it's a new source of income, and we have to look at it. I mean, let's face it. What are your thoughts about all these marijuana shops going to be around a new middle school? Now, you guys didn't have any thoughts or plans of building a school there, but are we saying something to our middle school kids, our kids that are going to have all these shops around them? Your thoughts?
So the school decided to build this school
Exactly.
there, and I'm excited about a new middle school, Charles Hackley Middle School, that's going to be state of the art and better serve our youth and be centrally located. Just so happens they had an opportunity to take over a portion of the former Hackley Hospital property to build that school, and it's right across from our phenomenal Marsh Field, and next to our Marsh Field is our Cannabis district, or our primary overlay district for the cannabis operations. And so I'm not too concerned about that. Cannabis is a legal product, and it has been approved both at the local and the state level in terms of being used for medicinal and recreational purposes. So I don't necessarily think we should be afraid of it or continue to stigmatize it. We need to treat it responsibly. And it is creating new opportunities in our community in terms of redevelopment and creative new employment in terms of new businesses for locals as well. And it is injecting additional resources into our community that can go towards police and public safety and parks and recreation as well. And so I'm not too concerned about that. I've heard some concerns about it being oversaturated. Something that I want to do is convene a cannabis conference with our local operators, to have them collaborate and look at potentially pooling resources and working together on marketing our cannabis district and making it a destination, growing the pie. So rather than more and more people fighting over the same pie, growing the pie to support our existing and new businesses as well.
Mayor, with COVID and with things going on, as you said that, and this is nothing that the city had control over with the sale of the property and the tearing down of Hackley. But how concerning is it to you that the city and the county only has one hospital for everybody?
Yeah. I mean, that has been a point of concern of mine in the past. I mean, I'll be honest, I was concerned about Trinity Health acquiring Hackley Hospital over a decade ago. And I'd actually wrote our Congress member at that time, that was Pete Hoekstra, and asked him to oppose that at the federal level because I was concerned about a healthcare monopoly in Muskegon County at that time. Now, in terms of the closure of Hackley Hospital, Mercy had explained that when they were doing their expansion on Sherman, I'm glad that they decided to do their expansion and the new hospital on Sherman. They could have easily gone to Fruitport or Northern Shores or elsewhere to build a $300 million new hospital. So I'm grateful that they stayed in our city, because that would have been a pain to digest their absence from our city and losing our hospitals from our city entirely.
Mhm.
So they expanded, have a state of the art hospital system out there, and I'm grateful for their investments there. I did broach the concern toward early on in the pandemic. I remember there was a meeting at McLaughlin Neighborhood Association where the superintendent of Muskegon Public Schools, Cortez, as well as the president of Mercy Health, Muskegon, Gary Lohr, were there. And I raised the concern about, hey, we are in a pandemic. Is it sensible to be closing down this hospital at this time? And can you allay some of the community's concerns about that?
Mhm.
And I recall, from what I recall, Mr. Lohr felt confident that Mercy Health had the capacity or the planning in place to respond to the pandemic, not only with their hospital system that they have over on Sherman, but also being able to access facilities at Muskegon Community College. They have a new health and nursing center there where they could put in additional beds if there was considerable overflow from Mercy. So they explained their thinking and their plans and how they could accommodate it, and didn't necessarily need to keep Hackley Hospital in place. And since then, I've also heard that even if Hackley Hospital were still there, there's not staffing to support it. Unfortunately, at this time, staffing is becoming an increasingly difficult problem for them. And you gotta expect that there's burnout happening
Oh,
to the staff at our hospital and healthcare system, going on 2 years into this pandemic, and it just seems relentless, and it's wearing on folks.
as well as tents outside of Mercy, and the U.S. government having to send people in. They said for 30 days, but that's going to probably end up more because of the shortfall of nurses and doctors, and the fatigue
Yeah.
of what they're going through.
Please, anybody that's listening to this, please get vaccinated. Please consult with your doctor about vaccination. Please give very careful consideration. I have been vaccinated. I got my booster as well last month, and then I got COVID. I got COVID even with that, but my experience with COVID was incredibly mild, and I credit that to being vaccinated and having got my booster. Now, there wasn't the booster hadn't gotten fully effective by the time I got COVID. It was only a few days gap between getting my booster and then having to come down with COVID. But it was a fairly mild case and short term tenure of it. So
Well,
please, that's how we're going to keep people out of our hospital systems. That's how we're going to save lives, not only people that come down with COVID, but people that have COVID, but life-threatening conditions in a hospital system that might not be getting the resources or the care they need because of diversion of that attention to COVID patients.
well, let me touch and agree with you on that one, because a week after I received my booster, we had my daughter, her husband, and my wife and I living in the house, and they caught COVID, and we were out of town. We ended up catching it. Now, my wife and I had the shot, and they were not. And it was no comparison. The symptoms that they were going through were major, and we had like a cough, a little fatigue, a little cold. Very important. I touch and agree with you on that one, buddy. All right. Um, did the city fire department get a new fire truck?
Yeah, we bought a new ladder truck, and we have a new engine as well. But the new engine has not arrived yet. The new engine will be forthcoming, but the new ladder truck has arrived.
What about manpower?
That's something that
Anyway,
I've yeah, the management knows my feelings on manpower, and that I'd like to staff up. But that's something that I'm going to be certainly mindful of as we're looking of budget reforecast and setting our new budget for the new fiscal year, allocating resources to staff up more. But beyond that, I want, and I've talked to management about this as well, working with our neighbors that in Muskegon on a consolidated fire protection service, so a metro fire authority that's standalone, so that we can pool our resources across municipalities to support a fires department that reduces that administrative overhead, the duplicative, multiple fire chiefs and the administrative overhead so that we can redirect those resources to where it matters most, which is on staffing and equipment and the strategic placement thereof. And so that's something that I want to work on. And management is our city of Muskegon management keen on that as well. And I've talked to the union for our fire department, and they're supportive of pursuing something like that as well. So it's just having those conversations and getting the comfort, building that rapport and comfort level with our neighbors on moving something forward that's not city owned or city operated. It is going to be a standalone fire authority in my mind that is welcoming of partners across Muskegon.
Well, I'm going to get to that question in a second. But continuing with your conversation, that that management has to understand with police and fire that they just can't continue to rely on the numbers of mutual aid. We're thankful for mutual aid. We're quite thankful for mutual aid. But here, the thing is that we just have to look at the numbers of the city. We have to look at what MIOSHA and OSHA and all the regulations state. And we, at some point, have to say, Muskegon has to take care of Muskegon. The city, we pay income tax and all kinds of stuff. Those numbers have to be there, whether it's fire, police, or, and you know me and how I feel about leisure services. I think that that's one thing that we have to get back in. I made sure that, matter of fact, people, if you don't know, if you're trying to get healthy, I joined the Boys and Girls Club. They're splitting with another group, and you can join and be down there certain hours and swim and get that stuff on. But I'm a little concerned, Mayor Ken, that I don't think the Boys and Girls Club is going to be enough activity for our leisure. Your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. I think they're a very important part, not only from a leisure or recreational perspective, but just youth development. And so I'm very grateful for Boys and Girls Club, and that's why I was happy to support contributing $1 million from our American Rescue Plan funds towards what they're doing in their new clubhouse. And so they're a very important part of that. However, I don't think we can rely solely on them in terms of our recreation and our programming and youth development in our community. So I want to build out a more robust Parks and Recreation department and establish a Parks and Recreation advisory committee. And so I've talked to management about that, and that's going to be coming to our community relations committee on reestablishing that type of Parks and Rec advisory organization that will serve in partnership with our city. It's being made up of citizens serving in partnership with our city to help identify priorities and allocate resources and investments into our parks. And so beyond that, though, I've talked to management about establishing a dedicated Parks and Recreation fund. And so parking revenues that we have at Pierre Marquette and Cruzy Park and Harbor Beach would go into that fund. Looking at creating additional streams of income that would go into that fund. And so that's where the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee will help us utilize those resources that would be going into that Parks and Rec fund. And so there's going to be some more movement on that and build out of that. And so stay tuned to what we're going to be working on in Parks and Recreation. But I'm excited about being able to create and identify resources to be earmarked for Parks and Recreation. And in my mind, it's not just about maintenance of what we have, but improvements and programming at our parks. Have our parks be a focal point and a gathering point in our community for folks of all ages, not just youth, but folks of all ages.
Okay, we're down at the bottom of the hour, so this train is turning. Let's talk about what do you see happening in the next 3 months. One thing I do want to hit you up, because this it hits me up every day, and I saw an article on it this morning, that the fact that people in the deer situation, and as you know, we have a lot of deer in our neighborhood, and people say, oh, the deer were there before us, but the deer are starving and dying. there's got to be something done here because of the car accidents that are happening, but yet we have deer that are so friendly that they will almost come up to you. Not a good situation. And I know you guys, are you guys going to do, um, I know you guys voted down hunters, like say I'm a hunter, I want to go and shoot Bambi. That was voted down. But did you guys decide to bring in the professional group to take care of that again?
We have not voted on that, but my understanding that was the direction we were going in when we shot down allowing hunting in our city of deer. And we did do a professional sharpshooter call a couple years ago, and that was successful. And they were able to get their targeted number of deer in just one night. They expected it was going to take several days, and but so many deer, it was done in one night. And so,
One night.
yeah, so I suspect we're going to be doing a call like that again with professional sharpshooters. Incidentally, I've got a constituent who asked me a couple days ago to meet, and we're meeting later today in a few hours, and I think he's going to be talking about this. I think he's one of the people that were supportive of a hunter, of allowing hunters, and so I think he's going to be betting my ear, wanting us to allow hunting in our city. But that created a lot of concerns and fear about safety. You know, having that kind of hunting activity and nearby to residential, and so people had concerns not only about being harmed directly from the hunting, but also deer that might have gotten not killed. There wasn't a kill shot with an arrow, and so they're running around, traipsing around the neighborhood, half dead, and causing
and that's in somebody's backyard.
Yeah, causing issues there. And so the commission was trying to avert that, and that's why we were looking at doing a professional call. Now with the county, I was thinking about this just the other day, but now with the county having acquired the old Nugent Sand property and moving forward with a harbor park there, Dune Harbor Park there, perhaps there's an opportunity to allow hunters into that property, because deer migrate. They're coming from that property into Bluffton and back and forth. And so maybe there's an opportunity to allow hunting on that property, which is more isolated and away from residential property.
Okay. Raina, she is just blowing up. What I'm going to do, Moraine, Mayor, would you give your phone number and your email address right now? Because she has just got point after point after point here, and we got to continue the show.
Yeah. My email address is ken.johnson, JOHNSON, at shorelinecity.com. And my cell phone number is 231-329-5825.
There you go. So get in touch with them. I want you to get in touch with them because you're bringing up some excellent points. And we just got to continue with the show. Okay. All right. So where do you see yourself in 3 months? Where do you see the commission heading? You're welcome.
Oh, 3 months, April. Well, looks like we're going to be doing our goal setting session in April. We were going to looking at doing that in February, but in terms of schedules and bringing our facilitator and whatnot, it looks like the short-term and long-term goal setting process will be done in April. So stay tuned to that. We're going to be having a strategy session on using the ARP dollars next month in February. We'll also have a legislative policy committee meeting in February. One of the things I want us to explore there is a declaration of a climate change emergency and what that means and how that would guide us as a city going forward to bolster our environmental sustainability and have climate change resiliency in our community as well. And so 3 months, we won't be tackling the budget yet. Staff will be working on the new fiscal year budget. We won't be exploring that probably till May, and then have to adopt it in June. And so our general fund has grown, and we're in a pretty good spot in terms of our general fund right now. It's fairly healthy. And so we've got some opportunities to invest and do some creative programming.
Here's that softball pitch. I'm going to throw you that softball. I'm going to lob it to you. What do you say to those people that say that there's climate control, when the environment, that's just a myth, that global warming is a myth?
Well, I mean, people can say it's a myth all they want, but it's reality. It's happening. You can stick your head in the sand and try to ignore it, but it doesn't change reality. It's happening, and now there's some debate as to what extent it's man-made or you know resulting from human activity. But the overwhelming consensus of scientists is that human activity and the Industrial Revolution, and since then, has contributed mightily to conditions that have caused climate change. Now, global warming does not mean that we're going to be seeing consistently high temperatures throughout the year. It's upsetting traditional climate conditions and causing extreme weather events. And so, and it looks like it's only going to be getting worse unless we get our arms around it. And it can't be, it can't be put on consumers or the individuals alone. Like this is something that's going to require collaboration across the board, from residents to governments to educational institutions to businesses, corporations, to everyone is going to need to be pitching in on this
Now,
to stop the worst from happening.
I want to go back. You were talking about dollars. Are there any COVID dollars left for City of Muskegon?
We are still spending through some of our CARES Act COVID dollars.
What can that be spent on?
Well, we earmarked for various different things already, and we just got a new allotment that's going to, and we set aside a few $100,000 from what I recall. I have to go back and look at the exact numbers, but to go towards helping people with water and sewer, preventing shutoffs and covering their outstanding bills if they've gotten far behind in their water and sewer bills. That can be used for that. And we just got additional money from what I hear also to help people with that. And so we are also looking at, I think we gave some of the money to support daycare programming, and I know that's going to be coming up next month as well. I talked to the managers recently about a few different daycare initiatives, one that's already got launched last year and a couple more that are looking at getting launched. And so opportunities to potentially use our resources to support that. Daycare is something that is much needed in our community, particularly for folk, working folks. It's hard to, and that will help the labor shortage too, to an extent, because it's hard to justify getting a job that doesn't pay you enough to cover your daycare.
Right.
And so if we have daycare resources that are reasonably priced or can be subsidized for folks that aren't earning enough, that changes the equation in terms of employment.
Okay, let's switch hats for a little bit. You guys are now looking at the Midtown building and some other building for low-income housing.
Yes. Well, the Midtown, are you talking about the old Catholic Charities building?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's we selected a developer to move forward on purchasing that. We did a request for proposal, and that had been published and put in the paper, and we got one proposal on there. It was a good proposal too. And so now they're working with staff on coming to terms on the purchase agreement or the sales agreement with them. But it's looking like they're going to be building 8 townhomes on Houston, and then redeveloping the Catholic Charities building itself into studio apartments, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments, including potentially garden view, and then maybe include some office space there. And then they're going to be building new construction on the corner of 3rd and Muskegon, which will be mixed use. So there'll be some commercial space on the ground level, active commercial space, and then residential above. And so it's going to be a bit of a variety of housing there. That's all going to be market rate on that property. However, I've heard that up this street, some new development there is anticipating LIHTC, low-income housing there right up the street. And we're moving forward with, you've seen Samaritas's low-income senior housing over on Pine, or not Pine. That's the next street over. I'm blanking on the street. Is that Spring? I think that's Spring.
Spring.
That's moving forward, and there's a few other projects being considered for low-income housing, but we're looking at housing across the price spectrum, from low income to market rate and everything in between, and trying to create a more variety of housing as well. That we are in a housing crisis, and it is across the country, but it's being acutely felt here locally in terms of people being able to buy or rent housing. And so we're looking at supporting, and we just approved allocating $3.125 million to go towards building new houses. And that's in partnership with West Urban Properties, and they're kicking in $3.125 million. So you're looking at $6.25 million altogether going to housing, half of which will be targeting workforce housing or the middle class to lower income housing. And we're also going to be working with additional developers in that same program, where we're bringing some ARPA dollars and to match with private dollars. So it's a public-private partnership to bring more housing into our community. And so it looks like Mr. Briggs and Mr. Williams, a couple other local developers are going to be partnering with us on that as well.
Maureen, another good question. What about Yuba, Jackson Hill area by the old farmers market area?
Yeah, so that we are the commission had approved a development agreement with Swan Alpha 2 LLC. That was in 2020, and I think it was the fall of 2020, and they were going to do housing in the entirety of that property. That's got scaled back after some further analysis of the ground there, and so they still want to move forward, but it's just been scaled back in terms of scope, and so it'll be on Yuba, some new housing, single family detached as well as duplexes. We're still doing some analysis of the grounds and soils there. It looks like they still are interested in moving forward with it, but it's raised some costs to do that project. But they're still interested in moving forward. Last I heard.
Okay, let's switch hats again. I know that you're not the public safety chief, but how is crime looking so far under your administration?
Well, I'm only two weeks in, so
yes, sir. The buck stops with you, sir.
So I don't get crime stat reports on a weekly basis, so I don't know how anything has fluctuated in just the fresh 2 weeks of the new year. But I happened to be on the BB&A board meeting yesterday, and the crime stats for December in their area was 0. So there was apparently no criminal activity over in your neck of the woods, G-Man, in the month of December. And things were, I was at the Glenside Neighborhood Association meeting on Wednesday, and they had very little criminal activity in their area in December as well. So I don't have any fresh stats for January though for you.
I want to talk about how has being mayor changed your life. I know it's only been a couple weeks. But you just said that you're going to meet with somebody right now in a couple hours.
Yeah, meeting with them in a couple hours. Yep.
And me knowing you personally and going out to meet with you, you've always been accessible. So there has been some change in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's been a lot more engagement in meetings, the ones that I already were maintaining and participating in and attending, but also a lot of other folks, across our community wanting to bend my ear or have a conversation about this, that, and the other, or just new groups that I'm part of, like the Urban Core Mayors. That's 13 mayors of cities across the state, from Detroit to Flint to Ann Arbor to Grand Rapids to Jackson. Good. And so, participating in that. So I've got additional roles and responsibilities in that regard. But yeah, you're right. I try to be accessible, but I've got to learn to set boundaries and find some balance, because being mayor is not a full-time job. And I don't get paid anywhere nearly close to what a full-time job provides. I mean, if you calculated my hours and compensation, it'd be well below minimum wage. So
trust me, you don't
do this for the money. I'll tell you that.
You don't do this for the money. You're not doing this for the money. We're at 2:49, and I want to give you a couple minutes to just clarify where do you see your vision with the next year's budget.
Yeah. I think we're going to be in a fairly good place. I haven't seen preliminary numbers in terms of what we're anticipating for fiscal year 2023, which starts July 1st, 2022. Um, but I feel we're going to be in a fairly good place, not only where we left, our general fund and having been able to add that in the last fiscal year, and we've been fairly good about balancing that or balancing the budget and even squeaking out surpluses to add to our general fund. And so I feel fairly confident there. And then we also have those ARPA dollars to figure out how to use most strategically for the benefit of our city long term, but also how can we use it to provide support and relief to our residents near term as we continue to navigate this pandemic, which hopefully comes to a conclusion this year, finally, and moves to endemic status. But I feel fairly good about the financial conditions of our city. Economic development continues. That's the fears of if Ken gets elected mayor, that some people were putting out there that all this economic development, all this momentum, and all this progress is going to come to a screeching halt. That was just fear. That was just fear mongering.
Right.
It's not going to come to a halt. We're seeing projects continue. I'm excited about the economic development that we're happening here. However, we do need to look at how can we spread that across our city more and pursue economic development more equitably. And so I'm excited that I just talked to our development services director, Jake Ekholm, this week, and a project that he's working on is creating an economic equity commission. And so that's something that we're going to be pursuing this year. And so he's going to be setting up some meetings to invite people in the public to help craft the development of this economic equity commission. And so that will then come to the city commission for formal adoption, and then we'll be appointing people to that to help influence the trajectory of the city from an economic development perspective, and ensure that opportunity is being shared, and that our community is benefiting from a more equitable perspective.
Speaking of what you just said, the purchase of the railway on the Sappi project was huge. What do you expect out of that now that that's done?
Yeah, so we're looking at we that's been many years in the making in terms of getting us to a point where the rail line company is willing to even let go of it.
Right.
Even though they didn't use it, they were getting revenue from it. Like they were getting tens and tens of thousands of dollars a year because adjoining property owners had to pay access fees in order to cross that rail line to get to their property. Even the utility companies to have a power line cross it, we were having to pay access fees. And so they were getting revenue from it, even though they weren't actively using the rail line. So they weren't quick to let it go. And so many years in the works of staff being diligent on working on that, and our partners with Pure Muskegon working on that. And so we've gotten the rail line company to be willing to sell it, and it's looking like the city's maybe kicking it up to $1.4 million towards purchasing that. That's going to come back to the commission for a formal vote on closing. We voted on moving forward with the drafting the documents now that we're, essentially at the same point, but it's going to come back to the commission for a formal vote on allocating those resources and closing on the deal. I would expect probably by the spring, but then that's going to unlock development opportunities at Pure Muskegon. That was one of the things holding it back when developers interested in the property came and checked it out. They didn't like the rail line there, and the prospect that they could store boxcars full of whatever anytime they wanted. And so that was a holding things back with the development. So if we're able to,
we're possibly looking at 600 homes that could be possibly built there.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's going to be, we're ultimately, when it gets fully built out, it's going to accommodate hundreds of people being able to live there. But I don't see that's going to be happening overnight. It's going to be, they're doing some more environmental remediation there and cleanup. And it's going to probably be done incrementally. So, piecemeal, then piecemeal, then piecemeal in phases, because that's a lot of property there. Like if you could fit our entire downtown on that property. That's how big that property is. It is basically a new neighborhood unto itself in terms of how many people could end up living there.
Now, what about the property behind my house?
There's some wetland mitigation that they're working through from a regulatory perspective, last I heard, but they still are very much interested in getting that developed and building out that area behind your house, behind that ridge. Um,
Okay. Um, it is rare to see someone genuinely care and has a heart for service of their community and residents. And we want to thank you for being that for us, Moraine. Again, she has been on this, man. I'm telling you. Did you pay her
my
to
pleasure
like
to
pitch
serve,
you these
Marianne.
questions? All right. So give people information how to contact you once again, because I have your number. You're accessible. You're willing to meet with people. Give them that information.
Yeah. So first and foremost, people are welcome to come to any of our city commission meetings. We meet on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 5:30 inside commission chambers at City Hall. That's 933 Terrace Street, downtown.
Or
We
you
also have
can
a
watch it
work
on
session.
Facebook.
What's
You can
that?
watch it on Facebook.
Yep, you can watch it on Facebook. You can show up and attend in person. We also have a work session the Monday immediately preceding the second Tuesday. There's often the second Monday, but not always. But it's the Monday immediately preceding the second Tuesday that we have a work session, which you're welcome to attend our work sessions as we're digging into things and deliberating on things to help inform our vote at the general session. And that is welcome and open to the public. People can also watch that on Facebook Live. Our work sessions and our general sessions are being live streamed on Facebook on the City of Muskegon government Facebook page. And you can also watch it on the city's YouTube page, and you can watch it on our local government access channel, Comcast Channel 96. And so those are ways that you can watch it. And you can also, email the commission beforehand. One of the things that I asked management to do is get our packets, our agendas published sooner so that the public and
Great
the
idea.
commission have more time to digest what's in those commission agenda packets, because sometimes they can be hundreds of pages long. I mean, I think
Yes.
the longest packet I've seen is 400 pages. Usually they're like about 100 to 200 pages, but sometimes they get to 300-400 pages, and it's intense. And so historically, we've published them on the Friday before our meeting. So we would have a Monday or Tuesday meeting, and we'd publish them the Friday before. I wanted to get the published sooner so that we have an opportunity. So folks in our community have ample opportunity to learn about what's going on at City Hall and weigh in. Contact their commissioners beforehand, whether that's in person, by phone, or email, or showing up at our commission meetings. And so the commissioners also have ample opportunity to digest, review, do the due diligence, engage not only staff to get answers, but commissioners or the public, our constituents. And so those are being published now. We're looking to get them published by Tuesday, Wednesday before the commission meeting. So about a week before our commission meeting. So you can go to shorelinecity.com to access those agenda packets. You can also, I have to publish it still on my Facebook page, but I'll be doing that. So you can follow me on Facebook. Ken Johnson. Right now, I need to update the name because it still says Ken Johnson for mayor. I need to change that to Mayor Ken Johnson on my Facebook page. But you can follow that for our agendas and other City Hall happenings. And then to reach the entire commission, you can just email citycommission@shorelinecity.com. And that goes to all 7 members of the commission, as well as our city manager and our city clerk. And so that's how you can to engage the entirety of the commission in that regard.
Mayor,
if you want to reach me directly, it's ken.johnson@shorelinecity.com.
That's what I was looking for. Mayor, thank you so much. We thank you for your service. I look forward to talking to you. We'll give you 6 months. That's when the budget comes out in May. So we'll see you in June.
That's good.
All right,
happy to be here with you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Take care. Be well.
Be well. That's Mayor Ken Johnson. I have 2 minutes, people, to talk to you about what's happening in Washington, which is absolutely nothing. And a lot of people that are mad at the president, well, we have 3 branches of government and nothing is getting done. Absolutely nothing is getting done. And if you're wearing a red hat or blue hat and dug up in a ditch, Get your head out of your, I can't say what I was going to say. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The press conference that happened the other day was the president was trifling. The questions from press were even worse. And this country is going to continue to be divided unless we say something. The president can't do nothing when the Senate is stopping everything. The House has a small majority. Nothing is getting done. And the Supreme Court is ruling conservatively. And you're sitting up complaining, and we're sitting up watching TV and getting these stupid questions asked by these reporters that are ridiculous. And I am sick and tired of it, and you should be sick and tired of it as well. More on this, because I am not leaving this alone. Washington, shame on you. You talk about the country being divided, it's because you're not helping. And I'm going to stop there because it's 3 o'clock. You've been watching and listening to Toward It To sow a seed in somebody's life. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later. God bless.
The wait is over. The all-new Umoja Radio Network, home to over 40 Black